Hello and welcome to Calm Mind, a place where thoughts are allowed to slow down. You don't need to make anything happen or arrive anywhere. Right now, your only invitation is to be here. Just this. Just you. Just resting. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw release. Allow your eyelids to grow heavy in their own time. No rush. Let's close the door on the day together and begin. I want to acknowledge something that might be happening right now, as you lie here. Something uncomfortable. Something that makes this harder than it should be. Rest might not feel like relief tonight. It might feel like failure. Lying here, doing nothing, producing nothing, accomplishing nothing. This might feel wrong. Like you're wasting time. Like you should be doing something more useful, more productive, more valuable with these hours. Maybe there's a voice in your head running through everything you didn't finish today. Everything you could be doing instead of lying here. Everything that's waiting for tomorrow because you're choosing to sleep. Maybe rest feels like laziness. Like you haven't earned it yet. Like you haven't worked hard enough, accomplished enough, proven enough to deserve the permission to simply stop. If any of this is true for you, if rest feels uncomfortable, undeserved, or even vaguely shameful, I want you to know you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not failing at rest. If these gentle journeys are meaningful to you, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a reflection below. It helps other restless minds find their way here. But for now, your only task is to relax. You're experiencing something that millions of people experience every night. The internalized belief that your worth is measured by your productivity, and rest is only acceptable when you've earned it through exhaustion. This is what I want to explore with you tonight. Not to fix you. You don't need fixing. Not to force you to feel differently. Forcing doesn't work. But to gently examine this discomfort with rest, to understand where it comes from, and to offer permission for things to be exactly as they are. Let me share something important. If rest feels uncomfortable for you, you're not alone. You're not unusual. You're not uniquely broken or damaged. You're living in a culture that has deeply confused activity with worth, busyness with importance, exhaustion with virtue. From childhood, many of us learned that our value comes from what we produce. Good grades, achievements, accomplishments, productivity. We learn that rest is what you do after you've earned it, and you earn it by working yourself to the point of collapse. We learned to wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. "I'm so busy" became a status symbol. "I only slept 4 hours" became a humble brag about dedication. "I haven't taken a day off in months" became proof of commitment. And somewhere along the way, the ability to simply rest, without justification, without having earned it, without guilt, became something many of us lost. So if you're lying here tonight feeling guilty about resting, feeling anxious about not being productive, feeling uncomfortable with simply being, that's not a personal failing. That's a cultural sickness you've internalized. And it's not your fault. The writer and activist Audre Lorde wrote, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." In a culture that profits from your exhaustion, that benefits from your belief that you're never doing enough, rest is resistance. Simply lying down and allowing yourself to be unproductive is a radical act. Right now, there might be a voice in your head, a critical voice, a voice that sounds reasonable, logical, just trying to help. It might be saying, "You shouldn't be lying down yet. You haven't finished everything. There are emails to send, projects to complete, things to prepare for tomorrow. This is lazy. This is irresponsible. Get up and do something useful." This voice might feel like truth. It might feel like your own voice, your own values, your own standards for yourself. But I want to offer you a different possibility. What if that voice isn't yours? What if it's something you absorbed from a culture that needs you to believe you're never enough, never doing enough, never working enough? What if that voice is capitalism internalized, hustle culture internalized? Every message you've ever received that your worth is conditional on your productivity, internalized? That doesn't mean the voice isn't real or powerful. It doesn't mean you can just decide to stop hearing it. But it does mean you don't have to believe everything it says. Tonight, as that voice speaks, and it probably will speak, maybe many times, you can notice it. You can hear it. You can even understand where it comes from. But you don't have to obey it. You don't have to get up. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to earn the right to rest by working until collapse. You can simply be here, resting, even if the voice says you shouldn't, even if the guilt is present, even if rest feels uncomfortable. Let me ask you something gently. What are you really afraid will happen if you rest? Not the surface fear, I won't get everything done, but the deeper fear beneath that. Are you afraid that if you rest, you'll be revealed as lazy? That if you stop being productive, you'll lose your worth? That if you're not constantly doing, you'll be abandoned, rejected, deemed unnecessary? Are you afraid that rest is a slippery slope? That if you allow yourself to rest tonight, you might never want to work again? That relaxation will turn into stagnation, rest into regression? Are you afraid that you're falling behind? That while you rest, everyone else is working harder, getting ahead, proving their worth? That rest is a luxury you can't afford in a competitive world. These fears are understandable. They make sense given what you've been taught. But I want to gently suggest they're not based in reality. Resting tonight will not make you lazy. Your worth is not conditional on constant productivity. You will not be abandoned for being human enough to need sleep. Rest is not a moral failing. It's a biological necessity. And you don't have to earn it any more than you have to earn the right to breathe. Here's a belief that might be operating beneath your discomfort: the idea that rest must be earned. That you have to work hard enough, accomplish enough, be productive enough to deserve rest. That rest is a reward for sufficient effort, not a basic human need. But think about that logic for a moment. Really examine it. Do you have to earn the right to eat, to drink water, to breathe? No, those are needs. Your body requires them. They're not rewards for good behavior. They're requirements for survival. Rest is the same. Sleep is not a treat you give yourself after you've been productive enough. It's a fundamental biological need, as essential as food or water. Your body doesn't care how many items you checked off your to-do list today. It doesn't measure your accomplishments to determine if you've earned sleep. It simply needs rest. And it needs it regardless of your productivity. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. But I would add, we also need rest to be what we repeatedly do. Rest is not the opposite of excellence. Rest is what makes excellence possible. Without rest, there is no sustained doing, no repeated practice, no lasting achievement. So if you're lying here thinking you haven't earned this rest yet, that belief is backwards. You don't earn rest through productivity. You need rest to have any productivity at all. The discomfort with rest might not just be mental. It might be physical. You might notice tension in your body as you lie here, a restlessness, an urge to get up and do something, anything, rather than simply be still. Your heart might beat a little faster. Your muscles might feel twitchy, unable to fully relax. Your breath might be shallow, like your body is waiting for permission to fully settle. This is your nervous system, trained to associate rest with danger. Your body, conditioned to believe that stopping is risky, that stillness is unsafe. If you've spent years pushing through exhaustion, ignoring your body's signals for rest, overriding your natural need for breaks, your nervous system has learned rest is not allowed. Movement is safety. Productivity is survival. So now, when you try to rest, your body sounds alarms. Not because rest is actually dangerous, but because it feels unfamiliar. Because stillness has become associated with vulnerability, with falling behind, with failure. If this is happening for you, I want to offer deep compassion. Your body is not betraying you. It's trying to protect you based on what it's learned. And tonight, gently, kindly, you can begin teaching it something different. You can show your body, rest is safe. Stillness is allowed. You don't have to earn the right to stop moving. It might not feel safe yet. Your nervous system might still be activated. But you can be here anyway. You can rest even while your body is learning to trust rest again. Before we go further, I want to be clear about what this session will not do. I will not try to convince you that productivity is bad or that ambition is wrong. I will not tell you to stop caring about your work or to abandon your goals. I will not shame you for having internalized these beliefs about rest and productivity. You didn't choose to absorb these messages. They were taught to you, often from childhood, by people who were taught them too. I will not promise that by the end of this session, all guilt about rest will disappear. Beliefs this deep don't change overnight. They shift slowly, through repeated exposure to different ideas, through gentle practice over time. What I will do is this: I will stay with you in the discomfort. I will help you understand where these beliefs came from. I will offer permission, not pressure, just permission, to question whether they're serving you. And I will remind you, again and again, that your worth is not conditional, that you are enough simply because you exist. That rest is not something you earn, it's something you need and deserve simply because you're human. You don't have to believe any of this yet. You don't have to feel different. You can lie here with all your guilt and discomfort intact, and that's completely okay. All I'm asking is that you stay, that you be here, that you allow yourself this time, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if the voice says you shouldn't, even if guilt is present. Can you do that? Can you simply be here, without having to fix how you feel about being here? Let's look at where this discomfort with rest actually comes from. Not to blame anyone, but to understand. Because when you understand something, you have more choice about whether to keep believing it. There's a concept historians talk about called the Protestant work ethic. It originated in religious communities but has spread far beyond them, shaping how many cultures think about work and worth. The core idea is this: hard work is morally good. Idleness is morally bad. Your salvation, your worth, your value, your rightness as a person is demonstrated through diligent labor. Rest was seen as suspicious. If you're resting, you might be lazy. If you're not working constantly, you might not be one of the elect, the chosen, the worthy. This belief system justified exploitation. It made people willing to work themselves to death because they believed their eternal soul depended on it. And it created profound guilt around any form of rest or pleasure. Now, you might not be religious. You might not consciously believe any of this. But these ideas have seeped into the water supply of modern culture. They shape how we think about productivity even when we don't realize it. When you feel guilty for resting, you're feeling the residue of centuries of messaging that work is virtue and rest is sin. But here's what's important to understand. This was never about actual morality. It was about control. It was about getting people to work harder for less, to internalize their own exploitation, to police their own rest. You don't have to keep carrying that guilt. It was never yours to begin with. Let me be direct about something. There are systems that benefit from your belief that you're never doing enough. Capitalism, in its current form, requires endless growth, endless productivity, endless consumption, and it requires workers who will give more than is sustainable, who will sacrifice rest and health and relationships for productivity. If you believe you're only valuable when you're producing, you'll work longer hours. You'll sacrifice weekends, skip breaks, answer emails at midnight, take fewer vacations. If you believe rest is lazy, you'll feel guilty taking time off. You'll come to work sick. You'll push through exhaustion. You'll burn out rather than set boundaries. And all of that benefits systems that profit from your labor while paying you as little as possible, giving you as little security as possible, demanding as much as possible. I'm not saying this to make you angry, though anger might be appropriate. I'm saying it so you understand. The guilt you feel about resting, that serves someone's interests, but it doesn't serve yours. The activist and writer Tricia Hersey, who founded the Nap Ministry, says, "Rest is resistance." She means that in a system designed to extract endless productivity from you, the simple act of resting, of saying, "No, I won't give you every hour of my life," is an act of resistance. Resting doesn't make you lazy or weak or uncommitted. It makes you someone who refuses to be completely consumed by a system that doesn't care if you burn out. But it's not just culture and economics. For many of us, the guilt around rest has even more personal roots. Think about your childhood. What messages did you receive about rest and productivity? Maybe you had parents who were always busy, always working, and you learned that's what responsible adults do. Maybe you were praised for being helpful, productive, useful, and ignored when you were just being, just playing, just existing. Maybe you learned that your parents' mood, or approval, or love felt conditional on your performance. Good grades earned affection. Accomplishments earned pride. Productivity earned worth. Or maybe survival in your family required you to be helpful. Maybe there wasn't space for you to rest because there was too much that needed doing. Maybe resting felt selfish when others were struggling. These patterns don't just disappear when you become an adult. They stay with you. They become the voice in your head that says, "You're not doing enough. You don't deserve rest. Get up and be useful." I want to be clear. This isn't about blaming your parents or your childhood. Most parents are doing the best they can with what they know, often passing on patterns they themselves inherited. But it is about understanding that the guilt you feel about rest might not actually be about rest. It might be about deeper fears, that you won't be loved if you're not useful, that you'll be abandoned if you stop producing, that your worth is conditional on what you can do for others. Those fears made sense when you were a child and dependent. They might even have helped you survive, but they don't have to control you now. There's another source of rest guilt that's particularly powerful in the age of social media: comparison. You see people on social media talking about their 5 a.m. workouts, their side hustles, their constant productivity. You see people glorifying busyness, celebrating exhaustion, performing hustle culture. And you think, if they can do it, why can't I? If they don't need rest, why do I? Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. But here's what you're not seeing: the editing, the performance, the unsustainability. You don't see the crashes behind the hustle, the burnout behind the busy, the exhaustion behind the rise and grind posts. You don't see when people stop posting because they can't maintain the performance anymore. And you're comparing your honest internal experience, the tiredness, the need for rest, the actual human limits, with other people's curated external image. The Buddhist teacher Jack Cornfield says, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. You would have compassion for a friend who was tired. You would tell them to rest. You wouldn't compare them to someone's Instagram highlight reel and call them lazy. Can you offer yourself that same compassion? Can you let your need for rest be valid without having to justify it by comparison to others? There's one more root of rest guilt I want to explore: scarcity. If you grew up with financial insecurity, or if you're experiencing it now, rest might feel dangerous in a very concrete way. Because when resources are scarce, when survival feels precarious, pushing yourself beyond healthy limits can feel like necessity, not choice. If you don't work the overtime, maybe you can't pay rent. If you don't take the extra shift, maybe you can't afford groceries. If you rest, you might fall behind in ways that have real, material consequences. And I want to acknowledge, sometimes that's not just fear. Sometimes that's reality. Sometimes the system is structured so that rest is a privilege many people genuinely can't afford. If that's your situation, I have deep respect for the impossible choices you're navigating. And I'm not here to tell you to just rest anyway and everything will be fine. But what I can offer is this: even when external circumstances make rest difficult, you can start to separate your worth from your productivity in your own mind. You can work the hours you need to work while still knowing, internally, that your value isn't determined by those hours. You can do what you need to do to survive while still believing you deserve rest, even if you can't always access it. Because the internalized guilt, the voice that says you're lazy, that you should be doing more, that doesn't actually help you survive. It just makes survival even harder. The truth is, rest guilt comes from many sources: culture, economics, childhood, comparison, scarcity. It's deep. It's complicated. It's not going to disappear just because you understand it. But understanding is still valuable. Because when you understand that the guilt isn't natural, isn't inevitable, isn't even really yours, you can start to question it. You can start to ask, what would I believe about rest if I hadn't been taught these things? What would feel natural if I hadn't internalized these messages? And even if you don't have answers yet, the questions themselves create space. Space for something different to emerge. Now I want to explore something different. What this guilt actually costs you. Not to make you feel worse, but so you can make an informed choice about whether you want to keep paying this price. When you can't rest without guilt, your body pays a price. Sleep deprivation isn't just being tired. It's a cascade of physical consequences that affect every system in your body. Your immune system weakens. You get sick more often. Wounds heal more slowly. Your body can't fight off infections as effectively. Your cardiovascular system suffers. Risk of heart disease increases. Blood pressure rises. Your heart works harder than it should. Your endocrine system becomes dysregulated. Hormones that manage stress, hunger, mood, all of them get disrupted. You might find yourself constantly hungry but never satisfied, or anxious for no clear reason, or unable to regulate your emotions. Your cognitive function declines. Memory problems, difficulty concentrating, slower reaction times, impaired decision-making. The very productivity you're sacrificing sleep for becomes harder to maintain. And here's the thing. Your body doesn't care about your productivity. It doesn't understand hustle culture or work ethic. It just knows it needs rest to function. And when you deny it that rest consistently, it starts breaking down. The guilt you feel about resting, it's actively harming your health. The belief that you haven't earned rest yet, it's wearing your body down. So one cost of rest guilt is this: your physical well-being, your health, your body's ability to function. But it's not just your body that suffers. Your mind pays a price too. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to increased rates of anxiety and depression. When you can't rest adequately, your brain can't regulate emotions effectively. Everything feels harder. Small problems feel overwhelming. Normal challenges feel insurmountable. You're operating with a depleted nervous system that can't handle regular stress anymore. And the guilt itself, the constant inner criticism, the voice that says you're lazy, the pressure to always be doing more, that creates its own mental health burden. You're carrying both the exhaustion of not resting enough and the exhaustion of beating yourself up for needing rest. It's a double weight. The psychologist Kristen Neff, who studies self-compassion, has found that self-criticism actually undermines performance and well-being. The harsh voice that says you're not doing enough, it's not motivating you to do better. It's making everything harder. So another cost of rest guilt, your mental health, your emotional resilience, your ability to find joy or peace or contentment in your life. When rest feels wrong, when relaxation feels uncomfortable, when you can't stop without guilt, life becomes exhausting in a way that goes beyond physical tiredness. You lose the ability to actually enjoy anything. Even accomplishments don't feel satisfying because you immediately move to the next thing. Even success doesn't feel like enough because you haven't earned the right to stop yet. Rest guilt also affects your relationships, though you might not have realized it. When you believe rest is unproductive and therefore wrong, you judge others who rest. Even if you don't say it out loud, there's internal criticism. I would never take that much time off. I would never be that lazy. I manage to do more than that. This creates distance. resentment, a lack of genuine connection, because you're constantly measuring and comparing and judging. It also means you can't be fully present with people. If you're with family or friends but feeling guilty for not working, you're not really there. You're split between the moment and the voice saying you should be doing something else. And perhaps most importantly, you become unavailable for the kind of rest that happens in relationship. The slow mornings with a partner, the lazy afternoons with children, the long conversations with friends that don't accomplish anything except deepening connection. All of that feels unproductive. And if productivity is your measure of worth, those moments feel like waste. So you rush them, or skip them, or can't be present during them because of guilt. The writer Mary Oliver asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" If the answer is work until I collapse, feel guilty about any moment I'm not producing, and miss out on connection because rest feels wrong, is that really what you want? The relational cost of rest guilt is this: you miss your life. The parts that make life worth living, connection, presence, joy, ease, all of those require rest. And if you can't rest, you can't fully live. Here's something that might surprise you. Rest guilt kills creativity. Creativity requires space. It requires boredom. It requires the mind to wander, to make unexpected connections, to play without purpose. But when you're always productive, always busy, always feeling guilty if you're not actively working on something, there's no space for creativity to emerge. The best ideas often come in the shower, on walks, in that drowsy state before sleep. They come when your conscious mind relaxes its grip and your unconscious can play. But if you can't rest, if you fill every moment with productivity, if you feel guilty whenever your mind wanders, you shut down that creative process. Studies on creativity show that insights and breakthroughs happen during rest periods, not during active work. The brain needs downtime to process, integrate, make new connections. So the cost of rest guilt includes this. You become less creative, less innovative, less able to solve problems in novel ways. The very productivity you're chasing, the good work, the meaningful contributions, the things that actually matter, becomes harder to access because you won't let yourself rest. You're running faster and faster but accomplishing less and less because you don't have the mental space for quality thinking. Finally, and this might be the deepest cost, rest guilt separates you from yourself. When you can't rest without guilt, you're essentially saying, "My worth is conditional. I am only valuable when I'm producing. My existence is only justified if I'm useful." But that leaves no room for simply being, for existing without purpose, for having value just because you're alive, not because of what you accomplish. Many spiritual traditions teach that your essential worth is inherent, not earned. That you are valuable simply because you exist, not because of what you do or produce or achieve. But if you can't rest without guilt, you're cut off from that truth. You're trapped in a transactional relationship with existence. I'm only okay if I'm productive. I only matter if I'm useful. This is exhausting in a soul-deep way, because no matter how much you produce, it's never enough to secure your worth. There's always more to do, always another way you're falling short. The poet and philosopher John O'Donohue wrote, "The soul needs rest, not because it is weak, but because rest is its primary task." Your soul, or spirit, or deepest self, whatever you call it, doesn't exist to produce. It exists to be. And when you can't rest, when you can't just be without justifying your existence through productivity, you lose touch with that essential part of yourself. The spiritual cost of rest guilt is this: you forget who you are beneath what you do. You lose connection with your own inherent worth. You become a human doing instead of a human being. So let's take stock of what rest guilt costs. Your physical health, your mental well-being, your relationships and capacity for presence, your creativity and ability to do meaningful work, your connection to your own soul and inherent worth. Is that a price you want to keep paying? Is productivity really worth all of that? I'm not asking you to have an answer right now. I'm just asking you to consider the question. Now I want to shift our attention. We've looked at where rest guilt comes from and what it costs. Let's look at what rest actually is. Not what productivity culture has told you it is, but what it really means. First and most importantly, rest is not laziness. These are two completely different things, though they've been conflated in your mind. Laziness is avoiding doing things you could do but don't want to do. It's a moral judgment about someone who has the capacity to act but chooses not to. Rest is recognizing when continued activity would be harmful and choosing to restore instead. It's responding to your body's legitimate needs rather than overriding them. Laziness is a character flaw according to productivity culture. Rest is a biological necessity according to every legitimate health expert who's ever studied human performance. You're not being lazy by lying here tonight. You're being wise. You're responding to your body's signals. You're doing what every human being needs to do to function. The fact that you feel guilty about it doesn't make it laziness. It makes it rest in a culture that has taught you to feel guilty about rest. Let me be very clear. There is nothing morally wrong with needing sleep. There is nothing weak about requiring restoration. There is nothing shameful about having limits. You are not lazy. You are human. And humans need rest. Here's something that might shift your perspective. Rest is actually productive. Not productive in the sense of making things or completing tasks, but productive in the sense of creating the conditions for all other productivity. When you rest, your body repairs tissue, strengthens your immune system, consolidates memories, processes emotions, restores energy. That's productive work, even though it doesn't produce a tangible output you can point to. When you rest, your brain makes connections between disparate pieces of information, solves problems you've been working on, generates creative insights. That's productive work, even though it happens unconsciously. When you rest, you restore your capacity for focused attention, emotional regulation, decision-making, and all the other cognitive functions that actual productivity requires. In other words, rest isn't the opposite of productivity. Rest is the foundation of productivity. Every productivity expert will tell you, you can't sustain high performance without adequate rest. Athletes know this. Rest days are part of training, not a break from training. Musicians know this. Practice requires rest periods for skill integration. But somehow, in knowledge work, in office culture, in hustle culture, we've forgotten this basic truth. So when guilt says rest is unproductive, you can respond, no. Rest is the foundation of all productivity. Without rest, there is no sustainable productivity, only burnout masquerading as dedication. Here's another reframe. Rest isn't passive, it's active. Your body during sleep is extraordinarily active. Your brain is processing, consolidating, clearing waste. Your immune system is fighting infections, targeting abnormal cells. Your endocrine system is regulating hormones. Your muscles are repairing. None of this is passive. It's intense biological activity that requires rest conditions to occur. And even beyond sleep, what we call rest, taking breaks, having leisure, allowing downtime, these aren't passive states. They're active engagement with restoration. When you read for pleasure, that's active mental engagement in a mode different from work. When you walk in nature, that's active sensory input that regulates your nervous system. When you connect with friends, that's active social bonding that serves crucial psychological needs. So rest isn't doing nothing. Rest is doing the active work of restoration, integration, regulation, all the things that make continued doing possible. The Taoist philosophy speaks of Wu Wei, action through non-action, or effortless doing. It's the idea that sometimes the most effective action is allowing natural processes to unfold rather than forcing them. Rest is Wu Wei. It's allowing your body's natural processes of restoration to unfold. It's active in its allowance. You're not doing nothing by resting. You're actively restoring. In a culture designed to extract endless productivity from you, rest is actually a form of resistance. When you rest, especially when you rest without guilt, without having earned it, without justifying it, you're refusing to participate in your own exploitation. You're saying, my worth is not determined by my productivity. My value is not conditional on my usefulness. I have the right to exist without constantly proving I deserve that existence. This is radical. This is countercultural. This is refusing to internalize the logic of a system that benefits from your burnout. Tricia Hersey, the founder of the NAP Ministry, says, our literal bodies are battle sites, and rest is the weapon we wield in that battle. She's talking about how rest, particularly for marginalized people, is an act of resistance against systems designed to extract labor while denying humanity. But I think this applies more broadly. In any system that profits from your constant availability, your endless productivity, your willingness to sacrifice your well-being for output, rest is resistance. Simply lying down and refusing to feel guilty about it is a rebellious act. It's refusing to participate in your own burnout. It's insisting on your humanity when the system wants to see you only as a resource to be exploited. So rest isn't weak or lazy or selfish. Rest is brave. Rest is resistant. Rest is refusing to abandon yourself to a system that doesn't care if you burn out. Rest is also about relationship, with yourself, with others, with the world. When you rest, you're in relationship with your own needs. You're listening to your body, honoring its signals, treating yourself with care. This is the foundation of self-compassion. Being willing to notice when you need something and actually giving it to yourself, even when that's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Rest is also about relationship with others. The quality of presence you can offer people depends on how rested you are. Exhausted, you're irritable, impatient, unable to truly listen. But rested, you have capacity for others. You can be present. You can listen with genuine attention. You can show up as more than just a depleted shell of yourself. And rest is about relationship with the larger rhythms of nature. Day and night, seasons, tides, everything in nature has cycles of activity and rest. When you refuse to rest, you're attempting to override these natural rhythms. You're trying to be always summer, always day, always high tide. But that's not how nature works. And you are part of nature, no matter how much modern culture tries to pretend otherwise. Trees rest in winter. Animals hibernate. The earth has fallow seasons. You need rest too, because you're part of these same rhythms. Finally, many spiritual traditions teach that rest is sacred. In Judaism, the Sabbath, a day of complete rest, is considered holy. It's not just good health advice. It's a spiritual practice, a way of remembering that you are more than what you produce. In Buddhism, meditation, which is essentially a practice of rest, of allowing the mind to settle, is the foundation of spiritual development. In Christianity, Jesus regularly withdrew from activity to rest, and taught that people are made for rest, not the other way around. Why is rest considered sacred across so many traditions? Because rest is when you remember who you are beneath all the doing. When you're constantly productive, you identify with your actions, your achievements, your outputs. You become what you do. But in rest, all of that falls away. And what remains is your essential being, the awareness, the consciousness, the soul or spirit or whatever you call that part of you that exists independent of what you accomplish. Rest is sacred because it reconnects you with your sacred essence, the part that has worth simply because it exists, not because of what it produces. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves." Rest is that patience, that willingness to not constantly solve, not constantly do, not constantly produce. That trust that simply being is enough. If you can begin to see rest as sacred rather than as laziness, everything shifts. Now we come to perhaps the most important part, permission. But I want to be very careful about how I offer this, because permission can easily become another form of pressure. Pause. 15 seconds. First, you don't have to stop feeling guilty about rest. I know that sounds strange. You might be lying here thinking, isn't the whole point of this to help me feel less guilty? But here's the thing, telling you to stop feeling guilty just creates more guilt. Now you're guilty about feeling guilty. You're failing at rest in a new way. So instead, I want to offer this. The guilt can be here. You can feel uncomfortable with rest. You can have the critical voice saying you should be doing something else. And you can rest anyway. Not because you've conquered the guilt, but despite it, with it, allowing it to be present without letting it control your actions. This is different from forcing yourself to feel differently. This is radical acceptance. Yes, I feel guilty. And also, I'm resting anyway. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron talks about staying with the unpleasantness. Not getting rid of it, not fixing it, but allowing it to be present without having to make it go away. That's what I'm inviting you into with the guilt about rest. Can you let it be uncomfortable? Can you feel the guilt and still choose rest? Because that's actually more powerful than waiting until the guilt goes away. That's choosing your values over your conditioning. That's acting from what you know is true rather than from what you've been taught to feel. Here's a truth I want you to hear, even if you don't believe it yet. You are enough, right now, exactly as you are. Not because of what you accomplished today, not because you worked hard enough, not because you earned it through productivity. You are enough because you exist. Your worth is inherent, not achieved. You don't have to prove you deserve to take up space, to breathe air, to rest when you're tired. I know that might sound like empty affirmation to you. Your conditioning tells you it can't be true, that worth must be earned, that value must be demonstrated, that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. But consider this. There was a time, probably when you were very young, when you believed you were enough just because you existed. Children don't question their right to exist. They don't think they have to earn their worth. That knowing is still in you. It got buried under layers of conditioning, cultural messaging, internalized productivity culture. But it's still there. Tonight, lying here, you don't have to dig that knowing out or convince yourself of it. You just have to act as if it might be true. What would it be like to rest as if you were enough? To lie here without guilt as if your worth were inherent? To allow yourself downtime as if you didn't have to earn every moment of rest? You don't have to believe it fully. Just experiment with acting as if. See what that feels like in your body. Your body has been carrying you through life. It's been working, moving, processing, functioning. Often while you push it beyond reasonable limits, ignore its signals, override its needs. Even right now, your body is doing extraordinary work. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are breathing. Your digestive system is processing. Your immune system is defending. Your brain is regulating thousands of functions you're not even aware of. Your body does all of this without asking for permission, without waiting to see if you've been productive enough to deserve continued functioning. And yet when your body asks for rest, clearly, through tiredness, through the heaviness you feel, through every signal it knows how to send, you question whether it's earned that rest. Can you shift that? Can you recognize that your body deserves care not because of what you've accomplished with it, but simply because it's your body and it needs rest to keep functioning? You wouldn't tell a child they haven't earned sleep yet. You wouldn't tell a sick person they have to keep working before they can rest. You wouldn't tell a friend they're being lazy for needing a break. The care you would naturally extend to others, can you extend it to yourself? Can you treat your own body with the basic kindness of believing it when it says it needs rest? Your body is not a machine that should be able to run indefinitely. It's a living organism with real needs and real limits. And one of those needs is rest. Honoring that need isn't self-indulgence. It's basic respect for the body that's been carrying you through your entire life. There's a fear that might be present. If I rest, if I stop pushing, if I let go of the constant productivity, I'll lose my ambition. I'll become complacent. I'll stop achieving anything meaningful. I want to address this fear directly. Rest is not giving up. Rest is not abandoning your goals or your dreams or your ambitions. Rest is the thing that makes sustained ambition possible. You can't pursue meaningful goals while constantly exhausted. You can't do your best work while burned out. You can't achieve anything lasting if you're destroying yourself in the process. The people who accomplish the most meaningful work, the artists, writers, scientists, activists, entrepreneurs who create lasting impact, they understand the necessity of rest. They work intensely, yes, but they also rest. They have periods of focused productivity and periods of restoration. They understand that sustainable achievement requires cycles, not constant grinding. What's unsustainable is the alternative. Pushing until you burn out, then having to stop completely. Working yourself into exhaustion, then becoming unable to work at all. The poet and activist Audre Lorde wrote, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." Resting isn't giving up the fight. Resting is how you survive long enough to keep fighting. How you maintain the capacity to do meaningful work over time. So if you're afraid that rest means losing your edge, your drive, your ambition, I invite you to consider the opposite. What if rest is how you keep your edge? What if restoration is what makes ambition sustainable? Here's what I'm offering. Not a command, not a should, but an invitation to experiment. What if, just for tonight, you tried resting without guilt? Not perfectly, not completely, but just as an experiment. What if you noticed the guilt when it arose, acknowledged it, there's the guilt, and then chose to rest anyway? What if you practiced acting as if rest were okay, as if you were enough, as if your body deserved care, even if you don't fully believe those things yet? This isn't about forcing yourself to feel differently. It's about creating space between the feeling and the action. Feeling guilty but choosing rest anyway. Experiencing discomfort but staying here anyway. You can think of it as gathering data. What happens if I rest despite the guilt? What does that feel like? What are the actual consequences versus the feared consequences? Maybe the experiment is just for tonight. Tomorrow you can return to your usual patterns if you want. But tonight, just as an experiment, what if you tried trusting that rest is okay? And if the guilt is too loud, if the experiment feels impossible, that's okay too. There's no pressure here. The invitation is there, but you don't have to take it. The permission stands whether you act on it or not. You're allowed to rest, guilt or no guilt, belief or no belief, comfort or discomfort. As we move deeper into the night, I want to talk about what might happen as you continue practicing rest without guilt. Not as promises, but as possibilities. Right now, rest might feel uncomfortable, wrong, guilt-inducing. But that's because you're fighting against years of conditioning. What you might discover over time is that rest actually feels good. Not just the physical relief of lying down, but a deeper sense of rightness. The way it feels right to eat when you're hungry, to drink when you're thirsty, to breathe deeply after holding your breath. Rest is meeting a fundamental need, and while the guilt might be present at first, beneath it you might find a sense of yes, this is what I needed. This is right. It's like taking off shoes that have been too tight all day. At first you're so used to the constriction that relief almost feels strange. But then, oh, the relief. The rightness of it. That's what rest might start to feel like as the guilt loosens its grip. A coming home to yourself. A rightness. A sense that this is what being human is supposed to feel like. You might not feel it tonight. Maybe not for many nights. But I want you to know it's possible. That the discomfort isn't permanent. That rest can eventually feel like relief rather than rebellion. And even if you're not there yet, even if rest still feels wrong, can you imagine what it might be like? Can you hold the possibility that this discomfort isn't how it has to be forever? Here's an ironic discovery many people make. When they finally let themselves rest without guilt, they actually become more productive. Not because they're working more hours, they're actually working fewer hours, taking more breaks, sleeping more. But the quality of their work improves. They have more focus, more creativity, better problem solving, more sustained energy. Because, and this is so important, productivity isn't about hours logged. It's about what you accomplish with those hours. An exhausted person working 12 hours accomplishes less than a rested person working 6. A burned-out person working constantly produces lower quality work than someone who works in sustainable cycles. Rest isn't the enemy of productivity. Burnout is the enemy of productivity, and rest is how you prevent burnout. So you might discover that the thing you were afraid of, becoming less productive, falling behind, losing your edge, actually doesn't happen. Instead, you might find that you're more productive in sustainable ways, that you accomplish more over time because you're not constantly recovering from exhaustion. This doesn't mean rest is only valuable if it makes you more productive. Rest has inherent value regardless of its impact on your output. But I mention this because it addresses a fear many people have. What if I can't afford to rest? What if it makes me less capable, less competitive? The truth is often the opposite. You can't afford not to rest. Not if you want to sustain performance over time. When you're constantly busy, constantly productive, constantly doing, you identify with your actions. You are what you do. You are your job, your accomplishments, your productivity. But in rest, all the doing falls away, and you're confronted with a question: who am I when I'm not doing anything? This can feel scary at first. If you're not productive, who are you? If you're not useful, what's your value? If you're not accomplishing, what's the point? But as you sit with that discomfort, as you allow yourself to rest and be without constant doing, you might discover something profound. You are someone beneath all the doing. There's a you that exists independent of achievements, of productivity, of usefulness. You're the awareness that's aware of all the activities. You're the consciousness experiencing life, not just the life that's being experienced. The philosopher Alan Watts put it this way: you are the universe experiencing itself. Not what you do, not what you achieve, but the awareness, the being, the consciousness. That's who you are at the deepest level. And rest is when you get to remember that. When the constant doing stops demanding all your attention, you can remember, oh yes, there's a me here. Beneath all the activity, there's being. This discovery of who you are beyond what you do is profoundly liberating, because it means your worth really isn't conditional. Your value really is inherent. You really are enough, just as you are. Not everyone will make this discovery in rest, but it's a possibility, a gift that rest offers if you allow yourself enough of it. When you're constantly working, constantly productive, constantly guilty about rest, you miss your life. You miss the sunset because you're thinking about tomorrow's meetings. You miss the conversation because you're planning your tasks. You miss the moment because you're already in the next one. But when you let yourself rest, really rest, without guilt, without the constant pressure to be doing, you might discover something amazing. Your life is happening right now. Not in some future moment when you've accomplished enough to finally relax. Not after you've earned rest through sufficient productivity. Right now. This moment. This breath. This sensation of your body on the bed. This is your life. These moments of rest, of simply being, of allowing yourself to exist without purpose or productivity, this is life too. Not just the productive moments, but these ones. Mary Oliver, in one of her poems, asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" If the answer is work until I drop and feel guilty whenever I rest, is that really how you want to spend your one wild and precious life? Pause. 12 seconds. Or might there be another answer? One that includes rest, ease, presence, simply being alive without always having to prove you deserve it. You might discover, as you practice resting without guilt, that you've been missing your own life. And that there's still time to stop missing it. That the moments of rest aren't wasted time. They're the only moments where you're fully present. Where you're not racing toward the next thing, but actually inhabiting the now. Your life is here. In these moments of rest, you might discover that when you finally let yourself be present for them, it's a process. Finally, you might discover that letting go of rest guilt is a process, not an event. You won't listen to this session tonight and wake up tomorrow completely free of guilt about rest. That's not how deep conditioning works. But you might notice small shifts. One night where the guilt is a little quieter. One morning where you don't immediately feel bad about having slept. One moment where you catch yourself about to feel guilty and think, wait, actually, rest is okay. I don't have to feel guilty about this. These small shifts accumulate over weeks, months, years of practice. Of choosing rest even when it's uncomfortable, of questioning the guilt even when it's loud, of acting as if you're enough even when you don't fully believe it. The conditioning you're working against is deep. It's been building for years, maybe decades. It's not going to disappear overnight. But that doesn't mean this is hopeless. It means it's a practice, something you return to again and again. Every night you rest despite the guilt, you're weakening that conditioning. Every time you question whether you really haven't earned rest yet, you're creating space for something different. It's like water on stone. One night won't change the stone, but water, persistently, eventually shapes even stone. Your persistent choosing of rest, your persistent questioning of the guilt, that's the water. The stone will shape. Not tonight, maybe, but over time. So be patient with yourself. This is hard work you're doing. Unlearning decades of conditioning isn't easy or quick. But it's possible. And it starts with nights like this one, where you lie here, feel the guilt, and rest anyway. We're coming to the end of our time together tonight. Though really, we're just beginning. This is the start of a different relationship with rest, not the end of it. If these gentle journeys are meaningful to you, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a reflection below. It helps other restless minds find their way here. But for now, just rest. Tonight, we've looked at many things. The discomfort with rest, the guilt that arises, the cultural and personal roots of that guilt. We've examined what rest guilt costs: your health, your relationships, your creativity, your connection to yourself. We've explored what rest actually is, not laziness, but necessary restoration, not unproductive, but the foundation of all productivity, not passive, but actively restorative. And we've offered permission, not pressure, just permission, to rest without guilt. to feel uncomfortable and rest anyway, to be enough without having to earn it. None of this was meant to make you feel different by force. It was meant to give you understanding, options, permission. The guilt might still be here. That's okay. The discomfort might remain. That's okay too. What matters is that you're here, that you're resting, that despite everything telling you rest is wrong, you're doing it anyway. I want to tell you something clearly, directly, without ambiguity. You have done enough today. Whatever you accomplished, however much you produced, whatever you checked off your list, it's enough. You don't need to have done more to deserve rest. And even if you didn't accomplish much today, even if you felt unproductive, unfocused, like you wasted time, you still deserve rest. Because rest isn't earned, it's needed. And you need it whether today was your most productive day ever or your least. You've done enough. That's not me patronizing you or trying to make you feel better with empty words. It's a fact. Pause. 12 seconds. You got through today. You survived whatever challenges it brought. You're still here, still breathing, still human. That's enough. That's always enough. You don't have to achieve anything else to deserve the basic human experience of rest. So let that be true tonight. Let enough be enough. Let yourself rest without the voice that says you haven't earned it yet. You have. Simply by being alive, by making it through another day, by having a body that needs rest, you've earned it. This is the deepest truth I can offer you. Your worth is not conditional on your productivity. I know you might not believe this. I know everything in our culture tells you the opposite. I know you've internalized the message that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. But I'm telling you anyway, your worth is inherent. It exists because you exist. It doesn't need to be earned or proven or maintained through constant doing. You were valuable as an infant, before you could produce anything. You'll be valuable as an elderly person, if you live that long, even if you can't produce then either. Your worth exists across your whole lifespan, regardless of how productive any given phase is. So why would it be different now? Why would you only have worth when you're producing, but not when you're resting? The truth is, You don't lose worth when you rest. You don't become less valuable when you're not productive. You're still you, still valuable, still worthy, still deserving of care and dignity and rest. Can you hold that possibility? Even if you don't fully believe it yet, can you hold it as a possibility? That your worth is constant. That rest doesn't diminish it. That you are enough, producing or not, working or resting, productive or still. And here's the final thing I want to tell you. Rest is enough. Not rest as a means to better productivity. Not rest as a way to recharge so you can work harder tomorrow. Not rest as a tool for optimizing performance. Just rest, for its own sake, because it feels good, because your body needs it, because being still is a valid way to spend time. Rest is enough. This, lying here, doing nothing, producing nothing, accomplishing nothing except allowing your body to restore, this is enough. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to make it useful. You don't have to turn it into a productivity hack or a biohacking strategy. Rest can simply be rest. And that's enough. It's always been enough. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, the present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments. Right now, this moment, you're resting. This is your life. This moment of simply being, simply allowing, simply resting. This is not less valuable than the productive moments. This is life too. And it's enough. You are enough. Rest is enough. As you drift deeper into rest, or perhaps into sleep, I want you to carry this with you. You don't have to fix how you feel about resting. The guilt might be there. The discomfort might persist. The voice might still be saying you should be doing something else. All of that can be present, and you can rest anyway. You can lie here with full awareness that this is hard, that rest feels uncomfortable, that you're fighting against years of conditioning, and you can be here anyway. That's not failing at rest. That's succeeding at rest while acknowledging the real difficulty of unlearning hustle culture. So let yourself rest. Guilt or no guilt. Comfort or discomfort. Belief or doubt. Let your eyes remain closed. Let your body remain still. Let your breath continue its steady rhythm. Let rest be enough. Let simply being here be enough. Let you be enough. You don't have to earn this. You already have permission. You've always had permission. Before I leave you to the night, some final permissions. You're allowed to rest even if you didn't finish everything today. The unfinished tasks will still be there tomorrow. Rest won't make them disappear, but exhaustion will make them harder. You're allowed to rest even if others are working. Their relationship with rest is their own. Your need for rest is valid regardless of what anyone else is doing. You're allowed to rest even if it feels uncomfortable. Discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it means you're doing something necessary that you're not used to yet. You're allowed to rest even if you feel you haven't earned it. Rest isn't earned. It's needed. Those are different things. You're allowed to rest even if resting makes you feel anxious. You can be anxious and resting at the same time. The anxiety doesn't have to prevent the rest. You're allowed to rest even if you're not physically exhausted. Mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, soul exhaustion, all of these warrant rest too. You're allowed to rest simply because you're human, and humans need rest, and that's reason enough. And finally, you're allowed to rest imperfectly. To rest while feeling guilty, while doubting, while uncomfortable. That's still rest. That's still valuable. That's still enough. May you know, deeply, that you are enough. I'll see you soon. May your rest be deep. And your dreams be gentle.